And how is everyone today? I'm personally doing quite well. Although my poor feet are a little bit sore from standing all day yesterday. I'm trying to figure out a setup that actually works back here. My crafting desk is at a height that just is... Oh, well now that works. Oh, hello again. I have a stool here. I'll move aside so you can see. I put a pillow on it because my chairs are just the wrong height for optimal comfort. This is actually quite nice. I can deal with this. So I was gonna procrastinate and not stream until later because I was like, oh, I've got 1,000 things. But I did those 1,000 things, so I'm gonna have breakfast because this is a very good way of me stalling. I already had a little bit of protein in my vitamins, so this is just raw calories, if you will. And I already went into my garden and had a couple sugar snap peas and a tomato. They are delicious and wonderful, and I love my little garden. It's not enough to feed, but it is enough to nibble. And this, of course, is tea. So I'm just going to make one of these up the way that I like to make them. Just a smidge of butter. Put more butter on my knife than I actually need, because it makes it easier. There's just kind of a ritual to it. And this is one of my favorite ways to have biscuits in the morning. Of course I did that so you can't see, but a little bit of butter, a little bit of honey. The biscuit itself tastes good. And I'll nibble on this, on the other 4 throughout the day. I don't usually have my meals in one go if I can help it. There's no dietary reason for this, it's just less pleasant. My stomach will get really full and very quickly, and it's just less fun. So what I'll do is I'll smoosh it together a little bit, and then I'll break it in half, and then I'll eat it. So anyway, I'm going to be turning this into a watercolor palette. And the first step of that, of course, is to turn on my hot glue gun. Okay. So, step 1, let this heat. Step 2, I'm going to try and kind of come up with a design. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be, well, it just has to be a design. So my dimensions are pretty straightforward. Oh, not for hand. Will this work? Nope. It wants to work. It's not quite there. Ah, but this will work. Oh yes, almost perfect. No. Oops, if I first make sure it's all the ways on the paper. Okay, so this now exists. It's a little bit too big because the inside circumference is going to be smaller than the outside, on the grounds that this is not one-dimensional. There's at least 2 dimensions, technically 3. So it does have some width. It's not molecularly thin. And the pen is, while a fine tip, it's not infinitely fine tip. So anytime it's tracing around, it's going to be slightly larger than the object it's tracing, as it were. Why did I put this other way? Oh well. So I got a 15 pack of these, and I've started pestering some of my friends that when their Altoids tins run out to give them to me, because, you know, why not? Now the temptation for me with Altoids tins is always, and probably will always be, to put my design in the shallower end, especially for watercolor, which doesn't need to be super deep, especially the way that I'm doing it. So look at this. It looks so perfect. It's so tempting. Put the design here. It's nice and easy to reach into. This is so much deeper. Look at that. You can't even see my finger. This one, though. It's so shallow. Unfortunately, from, where is it? From here where my nail is on, none of this can be used because this bends around the top. Although actually that could be pretty cool with the design. I could just say, and it fits. Dear gods. Okay, I'm gonna make this, quote, a whole bunch of really bad smut comics, but we're gonna make this work. Okay, so let's see here. If we go like so, I'm going to go ahead and close this. Okay, that clears. Cool. So, as long as I leave this part free, I can do any broad design that I like. So, scrap bin. Fell out of the scrap bin. That's okay. So, while this is still warming, and yeah, still pretty cold. It's not cold, but it's not warm yet. So what I'm going to go ahead and do, I think I'll try and do a ratty brew. I love ratty brews. And this is very much a bubble design. Okay, so basic ratty brew. In addition, I'm going to want to put off little areas. Yeah, I'll just make it stained glass style. I don't want any of them to be particularly massive. Because then I have to fill them with paint, and I want to have minimal areas that have all of these lines, these different shapes in them. The reason for that is that those become incredibly difficult to fill. So I'm going to make one that kind of circumnavigates most of the difficulty of the piece. Just because that way I only have to deal with one color being really hard to work with. Everything else is kind of secondary and based on artistic preference. Okay. So each of these slots represents a different color. How are you doing for heat? You're pretty close. So what I could do, or what I will do ultimately, is, and this tail can be a different color from the body. And the body can have a big old spot on it. Okay, so now it's a matter of causing this image to appear with hot glue. This is not easy. Not gonna lie. This is the part where I almost always want to rip my hair out. Not in a bad way, but not in a good way either. So what I'm gonna do, okay, so I'm gonna try and do, I haven't done this method before, so we're experimenting here. I'm gonna see if I can score my tin. If that's an option for me, then that is wonderful. Okay, so I did a little bit of the ears. Ooh, it's scoring! Excellent! The pokey method works. Again, making sure that my clear space is kept clear. I'm just going to go around this ear and do that. As much as my ADHD riddled brain wants to go ahead and do everything on piecemeal, do one little bit, then fill it, then do the next bit, then fill it. With this, it's gonna throw off how flush it lays against the metal if I do that. I say to remind myself because 100% my brain is like, do it, doesn't matter. But in this case, the brain meats get to hang out and enjoy the process. Maybe even meditate. Wouldn't they like that? Wouldn't that be so peaceful for them? To just turn off and let thoughts come and go. It's kind of hard when there's a bazillion thoughts going on simultaneously, but you know, I try. Or none. Like, truly, it's just my brain riding the waves of sensation from my body. Like, there's no word thoughts, there's nothing like that. It's just, I feel the sensation of wind on my skin, and that is the only thing my brain is processing right now. Only thing. So that's also the part of it. Okay. So the lines I think I can eyeball pretty well. Those ones, I'm not going to be messing up proportions on lines, they're lines. And if they're slightly off from where they're drawn in the sketch, that's really not a problem. But Ratty-Roo here, I'm going to want to do pretty accurately. So that's partially because my brain is like, no more. Please, dear gods, no more. So I'm going to do next. Oh, good morning! Hi there! I am making a watercolor palette with hot glue. Okay, so the rut is successfully transferred. You can see the hookums. This is an Altoids tin. You can get them on Amazon. And so the idea here is you trace your design with hot glue. What did you write? How did I miss you? I'm so sorry. Okay, yeah, no. Let's see here. Do apologize for not instantly getting back to you. I get lost in my craft sometimes. It appears that you've left. Alas and woe is me. Oh, back to work. That makes sense. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and trace my design the first time with hot glue. The trigger on this is pretty heavy, so you'll notice my hand tends to shake a lot as I do this. I'm not sure what the fix is for that. I mean, I guess I could get a hot glue gun that costs more than like $3. That would probably fix it. But knowing myself, I'm probably not going to do that. So I'm going to want to do at least 3 passes to get it at least 3 hookums high. And that'll give me sufficient troughs to actually keep my paint in place. Come on. Okay. Okay, here we go. And actually it's a little bit too thin to put this pattern on the top of the mouse, the little critter. So I'm just going to leave it as just a simple geometric mousy mouse design. There are some spider webs in here. I'm not too worried about that at this stage. I can remove them, but I'm going to put more down, so kind of one of those things where it's like, yes, I can clean as I go, but I can also clean at the end. And they're ultimately not going to cause much trouble, because most of these are going to be flush with the bottom of the tray, and the ones that are raised up will come out very easily. So I go through and I layer on one more layer. The second layer is often a little bit easier because you're just tracing something that's super clear and obvious to follow. And the third layer is all about making sure that there aren't any major low spots. Okay, coming back around, this is the third pass. Seeing the low spot here, so I'm going to go back and forth a little bit here, just to make sure. This is basically using one of those 3D printer pens without having to actually have a 3D printer pen. And its intended use is as an adhesive, so it works quite well for this application. If I could get my hand to stop shaking. Okay, so now I just need to get the underbody, and we are past the hard part. Okay, cool. Past the hard part. Hooray! Should probably wait for this to cool. Yeah, well. Alright, there we go. This is me waiting for it to cool. It's not. This is my ADHD getting the better of me and telling me that it must do. Come out, little tweezers. Come on now. Don't be shy. There we go. I will click at almost any inanimate object and almost never at any animal. I don't know why. But I accept this as a part of myself. And probably part of my personal self-expression, so that's fine. There we go. Again, anything that's flush with the ground is really not a problem. It's anything that's going to pop up and interfere with a brush stroke that's of issue. Okay, there we go. So I've got, I apologize. So far on my palette I have 3 colors, because I'm not counting the outer area, but my colors include the body color, the tail color, and this little color right here. So this is probably going to be either my white or my black. From here, I'm just making the stained glass effect. It's very exciting. Oops, I went way too high. That's okay. First thing I should do, one, I'm going to actually want to remove that. The hot glue gun is not very hot, so I can do dumb stuff that you really shouldn't do with actual hot glue guns. But I'm just going to scrape this off as best I can, because I forgot I need that area clear. I'm going to keep it clear, then actually has to look kind of pristine. Kinda, doesn't have to be 100%, just more pristine than a bunch of glue in it. Okay, cool. So if I were to delicately set this here, I'm looking at about this location for top of the piece. It's about a ½ inch down, which I can do. One of the tricks with this method is that it's hot and melty, and as such, it's important not to build up too many layers too fast while it's still hot and melty. Oops, I apologize, you guys had to see my belly. It's a cute belly. It's got sharks on it. I mean, a shirt with sharks. I don't have tattoos. I'm kind of sad about that, but kind of not. I really just don't know what it is that I'd want to have for my life. I don't want to put something on that I wouldn't want in a couple years. It's not even like, oh, I won't like it 10 years from now. It's like, no, I might not like it 6 months from now. let's be honest here. I am a very fickle creature, full of love and excitement and changing my mind about things all of the time. So here we go. Okay, and I'm just going to do one more here. So the design that it turned out is not the design that I initially drew, but it is pretty close. That's pretty typical. It's hard to account for just how thick the hot glue will be. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I need to raise this one right here because it is a little bit low, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. Everything else is pretty solid. I'm going to do one more pass across the length here just because. Oh no, I don't think it needs it. Just needs it in that one spot. So while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to start basic cleanup. Not because I should. Honestly, I should wait. But because I have no patience. And that's neither a good thing nor a bad thing. It's simply something to accommodate for when I'm crafting. Dry times are beautiful notions. Beautiful and otherworldly. Okay. Go. Excellent. Oh, and if you're wondering, a ratty-roo is just a normal rat, but I think rats are super cute, and I used to keep pet rats. I used to breed mice for the pet store. I'm not sure on the ethics of that, but they lived very happy, mousy lives right up until they were eaten by a snake. The happiest of mousy lives. They had their little running wheels. They would run up and get treats every like 3 hours, except at night. So they're completely habituated to humans. We were very careful to make sure that our little harems were super compatible, like no issues of aggression or this or the other. They're actually very peaceful. But their offspring would disappear a lot and become snake food for profit. And that, I mean, snakes gotta eat too. And as far as things go, like, we were super careful to make sure they lived their best possible mousy lives, because they were basically our pets. And the ones we kept all had names, like Whirligig and Kashavanishkas and White Lightning. All those friends. Okay. There we go. Cool. So, it's pretty much flush with everything else. I was just looking lower because it was wide. So here I do a little test. Basically, I'm visually inspecting to see if there's any holes or gaps. It's not the end of the world if there are, but it's better if there aren't. That seems pretty solid. Alright, it's the one area I'm worried about. No, that's solid. Just it's wiggle wobbly. Okay, cool. Now it's the fast part. Not that this is a slow process in any way, shape, or form, but this next part is extra fast. So, since I'm only going to make one of these right now, I could make more, but I'm going to make one for now. I'm going to go ahead and put this away. This gives this an extra few seconds to dry and allows my ADHD brain to be like, I'm doing something. I'm like, yes you are. Good job, brain. Look at that. Coiling the wires. My ADHD brain does not appreciate being talked down to, but it's very used to me talking down to it at this point. Not because I dislike it, because I genuinely think it's actually kind of a gift, but, I don't know. The part of me that is completely habituated to being around neuronormatives is, knows how difficult it is for them to, in my perception, how difficult it is for them to keep up. In their perception, how scattered I am. And both perceptions can be right simultaneously. But, you know. Alright, so now I'm trying to use up this set of paints. Specifically because I don't want to move on to my massive sets. So I've got 2 of those 36 counts for once I run out of most of this, but I'm going to want to make sure that I have the basics covered. And the basics are the pigment primaries. And pigment primaries are different from, so pigments are reductive. I don't know enough of the science to really get into it, but the pigment primary colors are yellow, red, and blue, whereas the light, which is an additive process, reductive basically means if you add them all together in the right way, you get black, or very nearly black. And additive means that if you add them all together, you get white. So light uses green, red, and blue, and that's an additive process. So the reductive process uses yellow, red, and blue. So at base, I have to have a yellow, a red, and a blue. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be somewhat close. Next up, I'm going to go by quantity, and because again, I'm trying to use up the supply, and so then I'm also going to go ahead and add a little bit of black. Not a lot of black, but a little bit. I think I'll put the black in this little gap right here. I should really prop this up. Let me go ahead and do that. Oops, there we go. Now you can kind of see what I'm doing. So a little bit of black will probably go in here. I'll probably make the mouse himself blue and his tail yellow. And then I'll probably do red in one of these. Probably red here. No, red here. Red right on top. That gets my 3 primaries out of the way. After that, what I'm doing is, and my black. After that, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the colors that I have left, and I'm going to group them by quantity. I'm going to go ahead and put a secondary blue. I've got 3 yellows. I'm going to see which one of these yellows is most empty. I think it's going to be this one. That's pretty similar to this one, so I'm going to replace that one with that and have this yellow. So I'm going to put my first layer colors here, and my second layer colors. From there, I can use up, well, I can use more of the orange up and filling that, so that's good. And how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 on the outside, 3 on the inside, so that's 9 total. So I'm at 7. So 2 more colors. I'm going to go with this green, I think. It's the closest to being out. So that's my 8. And then and 9. That was this one. So sometimes my palettes, sometimes my color schemes are based on me trying to just use the last drop of a thing so I can no longer have to keep track of the object. I don't really think that's a fault, and it comes up with some really creative things because I'm not going for what my brain says is good, I'm going for what math says is good, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing my paint to the edge here. I'm clearly making a mess. Oh no. Let me go ahead and get a protective layer of paper here. It's okay that these things get a little dirty. That's kind of their purpose, but if I'm doing this with a bunch of them, I might as well be careful. So when I take this lid off, it's gonna come out kind of kapow. Not like hardcore kapow, but a little bit kapow. Might have a rupture in it, that's fine. I'm just going to go through and do this to all of them. Just kind of move the paint along to the front. So some of these, and this is a logical thing to do, there's not a ton of paint, I don't want to accidentally lose some in the back. Others, it's really not very useful because there's so much paint in the tube that it's not really helpful. There we go. Pretty good. Yeah, you could benefit from that. Most of these paints that I'm using are Reeves. They're middle of the road watercolors. They're rock solid for a lot of sketches and things that you're not like doing final drafts on. If you want to have like super duper cool things, you're going to want to get something that's professional grade. And that's like, how fine is the pigment, how pigment dense is it, how vibrant and what quality materials are they using to create the pigments, that sort of thing. Of course, if you go super fine, not like fine granular, but like high quality, you're going to have a finer end product. But for most applications, these are absolutely fine. Considering I'm giving these away as gifts in the desert, I'm really not that worried. Okay, so I'm going to start with my smallest ones first. I'm just going to kind of push it in here and then squeeze. There we go. And if it's not filled all the way, that's fine. It doesn't have to be. So this isn't quite a true red, but I don't have a true red without opening the next container, and I do want to... I don't think it's a huge problem. Oops. Here we go. It'll be cuter if I do something like a green tail. I know people have issues with rats, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep this super cute. Okay, there we go. It's a little ratty. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe I'm just not strong. It's entirely possible that that's true. Okay, here we go. Oh my, this might not even be enough. Yes. There's a way to make it stretch, so I'm not really too worried about it not being quote-unquote enough. So let's get close-ish. Oh, look at this. This is almost completely out. This is fantastic. There's something kind of magical about using up a medium. Especially one like watercolor, where really the idea of using one up for me is like, how? How did you do that? How many thousands of things did you make? I know some people use more pigment than I do, and that can help, but it's still like very impressive to me. Okay, so this has become something I'm going to use up today for personal use, but it can no longer be used for the purpose it was intended, which means, yes, I have finished it. So I think a ratty roo might have been a little bit too complex for the amount of space I have in here. You can see it's a ratty roo, but it's a little less defined than might be most ideal. That's totally fine. It's just something that I'm going to keep an eye on for next time. And here we go with the orange. Alright. I want to force out the last bit, but I really shouldn't. So this is just very close to used up, which is fantastic. There's one more of these, and I will be able to use up the orange. Wahaha! Again, the ultimate goal is to get to my big sets and have only one or two of these paints left to wrangle. So I'm going to go ahead and set these back, because cleaning up as I go is a thing that I'm trying to learn to do. Yes, indeed. So I'm going to go ahead and put 2 down for every 1 up. Sorry, 1 down for every 2 facing up, because that seems to be about the ratio with this particular cup. Haha! It worked. Tightly packed within. Just only this one sticking out, I think. We'll go there. Hooray, everything fits. There we go. So now stage 2, because this isn't quite oh no, I left one out. Stage 2 is pretty straightforward, but it does require a little bit of tool. I'll be right back. Okay, so I take basically a smooth plastic stick, and I just kind of tease the paint to where it's supposed to go, and just kind of smooth it out. So with some of these, you don't really have to do a lot because they just went where they're supposed to go. Others, like this blue, it's now more cleanly in the blue slot. It also helps to smooth. Well, of course it helps to smooth. It helps to make the image a little bit crisper because the paint's undulations are no longer the focus. Now, as this palette is used, it's both going to become more clear and less clear. The more wet this surface layer is, the smoother it'll finish, but the longer it'll take to dry. So, you know, column A, column B. Often this will develop kind of a cracked look, which I think is super cool. Again, this is because these are formulated to be wet applied, not to dry on palettes. But again, I don't really find that to be a fault, just a interesting perk. You can even kind of shape the paint a little bit so that the initial presentation is a little bit prettier. So, sculpting that ear so it's a little bit more like an ear. Wow, the camera does not pick up what I did. That's okay. And I'm going to put a little bit of this dark blue right here as an eye. There we go. If this were large enough, I'd have been able to, you know, actually blend that, make that eye an actual thing, but this is a very small palette. And I was not thinking about it being a small palette at the time that I was making the design. I thought I was, but I was not. And that's okay. So technically I should have done yellow first. Yellow will pick up any contamination from other sources very easily, whereas you're a lot more forgiving with your secondaries and also with your darker colors. They'll just overwhelm anything that mixes in. Yellow doesn't like to be overwhelming though. It's much more about waiting until the shadows clear than popping with great magnificence. Alright, here we go. Oops, let me pull all the pigment off of this. This is what my hand looks like so far. I could do that with a paper towel, but why would I waste a paper towel? I can just wash my hand. It takes but a moment. You know what I forgot? I forgot to try the lid. So this might have a moment of truth. We'll see how it goes. It should be fine. Should be. Can't imagine it being terrible. Okay, cool. I now have a handmade palette. You can actually see the mouse now. And again, as this gets used and smooths out from use, it will become much more pretty. The yellow is a little bit more yellow colored. There's a slight color shift on this, and the green is a little more vibrantly green. The blue is pretty accurate, and so is the orange, and the red's pretty close. So the blue is more blue. This green is much more green than it looks in the camera, but that's okay. Now for the moment of truth. The moment of truth is where I see if this closes. It closes. Yes! Forgot to accommodate for the fact that this is going to go inside of this, so when it comes time, I'm going to have to just kind of muscle it down. But it does have enough of a lip, so as long as it's not closing all the way, it shouldn't be a problem. But I definitely have to make a smaller design for next time. That said, I now have a palette, and it looks like a little mousy mouse. Let me go wash my hands. I'll be back in just a moment. But I'll put on my little sign. Oops. Back in 3 minutes. Right? And I'll get myself my station all tidied and such like. So with this in mind, I'm going to go ahead and actually do some watercolor. Not a lot, just a little. I suppose that's implied by doing not a lot. I'm just going to do a sketch style, so not even going to use watercolor paper. I'm just going to use sketchbook paper. I will say watercolor watercolor paper tends to be higher quality, but I'm also not really complaining. Because I like the things I do. I'm going to see if I can raise my camera up a little bit so you get a better view. And now I'm just going to take a seat. Grab a brush. Again, I'm using just one of my bad brushes. I have a good watercolor brush, but these guys, these are post-convention. The paint that's on there is on the ferrule. The outside of the ferrule is acrylic. I'll pretty much guarantee there is some paint inside the ferrule. But when it comes to a moderate point, a little wiggle there. I actually kind of like the hook shape because it's what I got used to. I saw my friend do a technique that looked really cool, and much though it's tempting to pull out my good watercolors, I'm going to go ahead and just use these. They are not bad. I have bad watercolor. Believe you me, I love my trash products and I own them. I'm going to actually do a little ratty root. I'm going to use you, Conrad, as a reference. So while that's just setting over there to dry, I'm going to go ahead and roughly sketch you out. This won't look like anything, even I can barely see the water, but I'm just getting his shape. Pre-wetting is something I don't usually do, but it is kind of important for a lot of folks, and I saw some cool effects done with it recently, so I'm just going to go for it. And this tail just kind of goes straight back out, which is usually what rat tails do. I think it's cute when they go in a circle around themselves, but that's more associated with mice. Grabbing paint at random. Here we go. Not my tea. Nope, nope, not doing that again. Did that a couple days ago. It's not like the end or the worst or anything. It's just, it's like, oh, my tea. And now it's paint in it. That's no fun. It's in fact the opposite of fun. Making a variegated mousey mouse. He is so cute and little. I put too much glue on his foot, and that's okay, 'cause it's a sketch. I love the bleed through of watercolor. So like, where others like to do very clean lines, I'm like, that's fighting the medium. The medium wants to blend. And again, this is a sketch. It's for pure, unbridled fun and delight. Notice I'm a lot less careful about blending, drawing directly from the tube with the darker colors, with the brown, especially brown, because brown is a mixture of 3 colors. It doesn't really destroy the fact that it doesn't destroy its brownness if those 3 colors are slightly disproportionate to what's completely expected. If you want to have control over what color your brown is, make your own, in my opinion. Some wiggle room, of course. But, yeah, I'll be a lot more ballsy about just dipping directly into the tube. This has led people to be like, don't use my stuff. But I'm always very careful with other people's stuff. I don't really want to alarm someone else with my habits, with regard to things that they find at all useful or precious. So there are the things I do in private, and the things I don't do in private. Again, this is just a for fun sketch. It is not quality, but it is fun. And that's all it has to be. Right? Like, I've seen too many people get so caught up in whether or not it's right, and it just stops being fun for them. And that's the opposite of the goal. And the goal is to just enjoy it. Enjoy the interactions of the paint. Enjoy the feel of the water on the bristles as it imparts and finds its way to the page. That's where it's at. There is painting for creation, as in not just for the meditative effect of creating. Oh, I doubled down on words there, but that's not usually what this is for me. This is much more of a kinesthetic feeling, an exercise in something that feels nice. A truly platonic coupling between me and the paper. It's not about it looking for someone else. I'm not making the movie of it. I'm just making. Period. Full stop. I'm just making. And see, even me just talking about it, I'm starting to get self-conscious, which is gonna affect the shape and actually make it lower quality. If I don't care at all, if I'm truly just making to make, almost always it looks so much prettier. So here we go. I always debate whether to put ASMR on my channel. I'm told it has ASMR qualities. That's probably true. I trust the sources that say this. But I talk. I don't always whisper. Sometimes I get super excited, especially at night. And, you know, I think that's an okay thing. There is absolutely watercolor in the ferrule. I'm not even going to pretend that there's not, but that's okay. And there we go, a little watercolor sketch. Is it great? No. Does it have to be? No. Where's my pen? September 3rd, 2022. So let me see here. Should probably do one more sketch worth of material with this, but I'm going to let this dry, so I'm going to set it over here. This is why I keep multiple sketchbooks. It's not because anything particularly sinister or whatever. See, I do know how to watercolor. This is just for fun. But because as one's drawing, I can grab something else to work on. I think this next one is just gonna be a doodle. Oh, I have sidewalk chalk right here. I could play around with mixed media. Okay, so that will wrap that in. Okay. Okay, cool. So I have a baseline, kind of a pastel background. It would probably be a nightmare to write with calligraphy on because the chalk particles would... Oh, whatever. We'll figure it out. So then I'm just going to go ahead... Ooh, I should use a really wet brush. Don't have one here. It's fine. We'll just really soak our stuff. I'm just going to go ahead and create designs on this. Okay, I've got an idea. This one I'm going to complete because I'm working on completing things instead of leaving them halfway. I like that color combination on the back as a background. Kind of want to do like a little sketch of a dragon fairy. Again, a sketch is meant to be fast. It's not meant to be thought out or to look super this or that. It's cool when it does, but it's not really the goal or the point. And a use up the last of a thing sketch is doubly so, like just... There we go. Okay, so that's terrible, but whatever, that's fine. Doesn't have to be great. Payless note. I can do that. Okay, so same colors as before. Oops. Just going quick. I feel like I should probably be wearing a respirator for this, but I'm going to do a little bit. Calcium carbonate's not the worst thing for the lungs, it's just also not the greatest. Okay, so let's go ahead and sketch out a dragon. Shitty face. I'm going to face this way. Wait, don't go into art in here. We're doing sketches, we're not doing drawings. Alright, so just go fast. Okay. Oh, that's a nice little sketch. Add that to the pile. Still got blue paint. So that's the problem. There's always going to be more blue paint. I am going to continue to find things to paint. Let's see here. That, nope. That, nope. That, nope. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Ah. Ooh, let's see here. Ooh, I'm getting close to the end. That is good news. Okay. There we go. There we go. It should be pale enough that I can actually write over the top of most of it without too much issue. Let's see here. I'll just keep on a theme. That's always the hardest part. I always want to like change things up. I'm like, mushrooms! Like, no, we're doing redwood trees with little goose pens in them. That is what we are making. If I keep it on theme, it will look much more deliberate. But I can put little toadstools at its base. I'm just practicing that shape over and over. Nope, I would draw from the base. It's good knowledge. And now I will do a snake, because I love little sneaky snakes. And this neck is going to get wings, because I feel like giving it wings. Gotta admit, that's the only inspiration for why it has wings. It doesn't have wings yet, but it may as well. Like, its body is sculpted for them. There's this thick part right here. Let's make it a fey dragon. Let's give it little baubles at the end of its tail. Okay, and there we go. See? Another little sketch. Good, we're running out of places for them. That's fine, that's totally fine. Yeah, that'll work. Looks like I'm in the mood to draw wings, so I'm just going to draw a couple wings. Okay. These are hard. Okay, well, I like that. Okay, so I've done some sketching. Let's say I'm back in practice. That should be sufficient for now. Alright, let me put things back in order, because, that's always the fun part. So let's see here. What did I say I was going to do today? That's what my little descriptions are like the main reason I'm able to keep track of things. Breakfasting, tea. I do have tea. I have breakfasted a little bit. Watercolor palette building and editing. Okay, so no getting around that. It's time for me to edit. Woo! I'm gonna leave this out as just a. This is a bad idea, but I do want to use it up. It's so close. You know what? I could just say it's used up. Pretty much is. I'm gonna have to say it's used up. There's not much left in it, and I will make a huge mess. So, with those two facts both known, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's done. Okay, so. Oh, that chalk and watercolor method, I like that. I'm gonna have to revisit that, because that's two very separate effects. So that now has a little bit of staining on it. I'm going to try and make it look a little more deliberate. One, I'm going to dilute it a little. Nope, not diluting. That's fine. Will you dilute? Nope. So step 2 is to put a sticker on it. There we go. Okay, so set that there. Yeah, that kind of works. Shows the initial vision and then what it turned out to be. I'm okay with that. God, and it's so freaking cute. Little mousy mouse doing this little thing. Okay, so editing. I know that the minute I start doing it, I'm gonna get way involved and super love it. I'm not gonna lie. Right this second, I'm circling the airport. Okay. Oh, if I'm gonna circle, let me circle properly. So let me clean up my watercolor. Okay. Tea is absolutely delightful. Watercolors can go here. This goes up here. None of these are yet dry, so I'm going to have to leave them there for a few moments. But as they dry, I'll start closing them up and putting them away. This is good. This is moderately dry. I'm just going to set it underneath this one. Are you dry? You are dry enough. So likewise underneath this one. You are still wet. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and gather my highlighters. They don't have to be the same ones from yesterday, so I'm just mixing up my bag of highlighters. They're going to be mostly on the top, but Who doesn't like a little massage? I'm going to be avoiding my mild liners because I'm using printer paper. So I'm going to be using things that are a little bit more friendly for bleed through. This one's pretty juicy. It hasn't bled through yet, but I have to be careful with it. But I'd rather have one that I'm careful with than 8 that I'm careful with. I don't know how good you are. It's highlighter True Red. People will randomly give me pens, and I love them with all of my heart. The people and the pens. But I will say, I don't always know who gave me what. There's one mild liner that does work on. This one should, but I don't trust it as much as, yeah, this dude's pretty good. He doesn't bleed through, he's very pastel. I gotta believe it, but I think that'll be too dark. I do have a dark green now. So my pencils, I'm going to go ahead and sharpen them just a little. They don't need to be super sharp, but a little bit sharp. That seems like a reasonable circle in the airport kind of thing to do. Okay, I'm going to sit down while I do this because yesterday I kind of hurt my feet a little bit. Not a lot of it, but just a little. So I'm going to set to setting 2. And this is one of those adjustable ones. I can put it to 4. I forget which way goes which. I'm gonna try it at 4. See how that does. Okay, so that's a stubbier pencil. So I think 2 is actually closer to my preference then. Here we go. So back at 2. Go. I don't need it razor sharp, just a little sharp. And again, this is more part of the meditative, getting myself in a mind state to do editing part of it than it is strictly essential. Here we go. Alright, so then I'll go ahead and empty this. This is the empty part. I'm going to do that over my trash bin. I think going forward I'm going to want to use 3, because I want these to be sharp, but not so sharp that they're prone to break. I think that's going to be my ideal there. I'm going to go ahead and take out my manuscript in progress, so that I'm not revealing anything that I consider confidential. I consider anything that I don't have explicit and recent permission to allow to be seen visually, but to allow to be shared. It has to be mine, or I have to have explicit recent permission given. And I do not have that. This next piece I'm going to be working on does not represent either of those things. So I want it low enough that you can see that I'm working. The angle should be steep enough that it really makes it distorts the letters. And raise the camera angle so you can see that my fingers are doing stuff. This will drift slightly down, but not a lot down. So you'll see me do, okay, cool, you can see me reading. Can't see what I'm reading. Cool, okay, so I've got that. And then my setup for yesterday is working pretty well, so I think I'm going to maintain it. And I was using this for kind of longer notes. And then I was using this for explaining what various highlighted colors meant and represented. I'll set this back here. Oh, this can go over here. That's just going to be drying for like 3 days. Making palettes is not fast. At least using the methods I use. Okay, so this goes here. Which means, for visual reference, these would be best served by being here. I can have this here because you'll see me using that a lot, and I can set this. I can either set this up here or over here, which would be off screen. And this is kind of visually cluttered. Okay. That looks nice. I'll give myself some flowers. Oh, that doesn't work for me. Okay. So I have this set up, which is excellent. So next up, oh, that was my foot. Next up, I'm going to set this here. So again, you're not really seeing any of the words. You're seeing that words exist. And there's a difference between those two things. This one preserves confidentiality, and it does not. So let me go ahead. And put this back up in place. I'm really working on putting things away as I go. It's been a challenge. I am not good at it. But that said, I don't have to be good at it for it to be worthy of my efforts. Oh, and I will need my washi tape for when I affix this, because this is, the stickums is kind of gone. Because it is. So I go to Scraps. Scraps is a secondhand art store, and I think it's amazing. It's one of my favorite places to gather stuff. Crackums the backums. Oh my goodness. And they have a free section, which is even better. And often I'll find little like doodads, like little notepads. I think it's cute. I still want to paint. See, and that's the danger here. Okay, so I'm gonna paint. Sorry about the noise. I can still use a bad brush. I'm gonna go ahead and do a mountain scene. Ooh, this is super absorbent. This is gonna give me weird textures. I love it. Palette cleanse painting is where I'm pretty much exclusively using the wet paint that's dry, or sorry, the dry paint on the palette. It's a interesting limitation because it's limited to what you didn't use last time, I suppose. What you started to make and didn't use up. Often it's kind of a range of browns, so you're working against the muddy properties of browns in most cases. I like it. I find it to be very relaxing. And it cleans off my palette without me throwing out paint, which I also very much appreciate. And often I'll cheat near the end and use just a little bit of paint from the actual ink paint wells, color wells. But, you know, that's a very small cheat. Alright. And it's little things like this. I absolutely adore editing. I find it to be one of the most relaxing things. And for those authors who know what a goober I am, I can get away with being a little bit more, you know, just making it more fun. It's very difficult for most people to receive edits and critiques, and I am being pretty darn harsh with this piece, but having little, like, no, this is a human kind of helps sometimes. Sometimes. I mean, every person's different, so, like, grain of salt here, but still. So, for the most part, the critiques I'm giving this author are very advanced. They're not, there's very few grammatical errors to speak of, and so mostly what I'm doing is like, hey, I see you're doing this thing sometimes and I really like it. Please lean into this. Occasionally it's things like, hey, there could be a comma for an introductory phrase, or your coordinating conjunction, you know, you could put a comma, but even then, like, coordinating conjunctions are all about, of the grammatical rules, they are the most, because part of their rule is that it's based on whether or not the sentence is quote-unquote too long, and that is highly subjective. So, like, if it's short enough, you don't need one. And defining short is truly a matter of, like, the specific publishing house's style and the author's style. And I'm not a publishing house. I don't even pretend that I am. It would be great if I was, but I do not have the money to start that, and I do not have the background to make a success of it if I did. So, that said, yeah, that said. So this final bit is just to put some water in here. Okay, so far, I've just a little mountain scene. Nothing spectacular. Still pale enough for me to be able to easily write notes. You can actually see the guiding lines, and these are much paler than the ink I use will be. From here, I'm just going to do a blue sky, and a very watery one at that. One of the benefits to this is that the clouds will just happen to show up where they show up. I am using paint from the actual palette here, but not very much, and I'm using my very pale blue, which just kind of is very pigment light. There's not a lot of pigment going on there, and it works really well because it means that it is functionally just a blending medium for all the rest, which I like. I find that to be very helpful. It wouldn't be helpful if it was the only thing in this palette, but this palette is, this particular palette is professionally made to be a watercolor palette with the watercolor paints as the forefront. So I use high quality paints, this, that, and the other, which I think is cool, but you know, there we go. A little scene. Yeah, okay. I feel a little better about starting. That was way too loud and I do apologize. Okay. That goes away. This goes back up here. And hopefully by the time I need to write him a long note, it will be dry. Yeah. So right off the bat, the description would be better served if integrated into the actions of the occupants. This is something that I think a lot of authors would benefit from working on integrating more. So it's very easy to use very good descriptive language, beautiful, at the very beginning of a chapter to just kind of set the scene. This seems very logical, but it's more boring to read than, say, so this is not a barn, so I'm going to use a barn as an example because it's not a barn. But like, the barn was constructed of old oak with heavy timbers damaged by smoke, or coated in a fine veneer of smoke. Cool, it's very pretty, it's very flowery. But having something along the lines of Miriam was careful not to brush her fine skirts against the walls of the barn, comma, and then describing that scene. It gives more of like an immediacy. It's not just describing a picture, it's describing a scene in which the characters that you're living vicariously through are interacting. Like, why does it even matter that this thing is happening? Oh, because she's interacting with it, and that can be a lot more compelling. So anytime I see descriptive text that doesn't have a specific thing contextualizing it, I will point it out. It doesn't always need to get fixed, and that's the big thing. I'll point this stuff out, but it's not always in the author's best interest to listen to me and my little critiques. It is important for them to be conscious of whatever decision they do so that they can lean into their artistic choices. There are some very nice, I've only read shorts with this, but artistic shorts that very much so separate out, this is a descriptive paragraph, and then this is an action. And the action things where they're describing what the person is doing have no context with the, no cues saying that they're in this environment. So it is jarring, but it can be done very effectively. So it's not like it's a hard rule, but it is something you want to, that is good to be deliberate about. So I'm actually going to read ahead a few pages before I make too many more comments, because I realized that I hadn't gotten too far into this, and I want to make sure that I'm doing this proper like. Echo. Play Kingdom Death music.
I couldn't find any Kingdom Death songs. What other music do you want to listen to? Perhaps Disney?
Echo, play death metal.
The playlist Best of Children of Bodom on Amazon Music.
Echo? Echo? I'll just manually turn the volume down. There we go. So hopefully that's barely audible to y'all. I kind of wish I could make it a little quieter, because I don't want to get my content banned or censored. Just drop that down a hole and put some on top of it. There we go. Why is my microphone picking that up? You know what? Whatevs. It doesn't get quieter. Oh well. That's just me reading anyway, so if it mutes, it mutes. Echo, stop. Echo, stop. There we go. Alright, so adjective for table, because the table is the primary location for this action. a small description for, he's describing a kind of ale, but he uses a very long form, so I'm like, just truncate it and then just use it by its nickname going forward. Like, that's totally doable, and saves you words. For a lot of folks, and this is an early draft, but for a lot of folks, it's get down as many words as you can and then cut and cut, and this is the stage I assume our author friend is at. The next part is for PC reasons, the first person to have their skin color mentioned in a section should not be the dark-skinned person. He does describe skin color in the previous section for a couple of the characters. It's just something to be mindful of in the current political climate, and also because, you know, a lot of authors will only mention the skin color of folks who are exotic to their setting, and a lot of authors put exotic to their setting as different from themselves, and a lot of authors these days, stereotypically, that get published are white. So it's just something to be mindful of. If you're not going to describe someone's, you know, drywall white skin with with patches of pink that watercolor along the veins, along the dark blackish blue veins, so my skin color, you shouldn't be describing anyone too much, or rather make it equal. Or make it like obvious that the speaker is like, he's weird looking. Like, it shouldn't just be the exception is just be careful. Just be careful. I think it's the biggest word. It's hard to describe this right, but inclusion does not mean creating exceptionalism. Just like describing people with food things is only good if it's everyone. Or, you know, this, that, and the other. Anyhow. Or have a reason for it. Like, if they are in torchlight and someone is entranced by the way the light plays off their skin, that's absolutely a reason to describe what it is that they're seeing, because that's capturing an emotion based on lighting. That can be another good exception. I do apologize. I'm so sorry. So the corrections on this one, which is 2A, is an alternate word, which was a very small thing, and then a compliment. I love the long name immediately followed by the short version. That's super useful for us as readers to be like, oh, the the long name is this, but you're going to use this shorter version. To have that right next to each other like this is so useful because he introduces a little bit about the character with them having action, which is fantastic. Sitting or being in a place in the scene, that sort of thing. And then the dialogue that follows immediately after, because he's introducing them because they're engaging with the protagonist, he provides their shorthand name that the protagonist is going to use with them, which is absolutely beautiful. It shows that the protagonist knows their full name and that they are on familiar terms, or that their culture just says that because of whatever reason, they are using the shorter form. Traditionally, that is because it's less formal, but this is fantasy. We don't have to follow those rules if we don't want to. Alright. So the first is just a general comment. Very dire. I like this. The next one is, and I like the immediate refutation. So you've got dialogue going on. They're disagreeing. So it's telling the audience that one of these two individuals is probably less reliable than the other. So you're seeing a power dynamic here, a slight jostling for position, but not in like physical terms. You're seeing it just in the way their dialogue is playing out. The word of the person speaking is not absolute, and it's not, though he's the primary speaker and though he's the protagonist, he doesn't have absolute control over the other players here, but he's trying to assume that role. I very much like it when just little hints of dialogue can relay that much information. So then the other is either you use a rule of 3 with regard to repetition, or to replace one of the words with a different word. So you're keeping similar, but not forced into the rule of 3. Because I know is not nearly as strong literarily than I know, which is the tone that it sounds like he's trying to go for, but you know, he doesn't use the word I know, he uses a different word. Further versus farther, easy thing to, I do that error all the time. Then we have the first dialogue by a more taciturn character. So I'm marking it not because it's wrong, but because in this case he's using a very unique vocal cadence. So it's important to keep that consistent. Once this draft gets a little bit closer to the end, so not this draft, but like 3 or 4 passes from here, it's a good idea to highlight the text for a given character one color throughout the entire book, and compare just their dialogue for vocal cues, and then do this sequentially for each character. This produces a tags such as like said and what have you, and labels such as the person's name or epithets for them are super useful. If you've got very clear voices, you can actually get away with not using those at all, even if you're not using a purely dyadic sequence, if you will. So if you have, you know, Martha says, I like tea, Carol says, I like coffee, and then you alternate back and forth, tea is better, coffee's better, tea takes only sugar and no cream. You're wrong, coffee is better because it produces whatever the thing is. Well, if you add a third voice into there, then you have to be labeling, it suddenly becomes necessary to label everything. However, if your voices are so different, their patterns are so different that it's very clear, even without labeling them, who's speaking. Mwah! Chef's kiss. All right, so one is just a slight rephrasing of his words, just to make it a little cleaner. Then there's another. The next paragraph is very slow. It's talking about his internal thoughts, but not his internal emotions, and it's like you've already relayed this information. And then the next paragraph down is again a relay of the same information, and then he breaks it up with a very short, concise about face paragraph, and I'm like, nice, back to being intrigued, because I am. I just realized I should check my email real quick. Oh, that's a thing. I did that to my leg. Where's my laptop? Grumpy Bunny, where art thou? Oh, there you are. Directly in front of me. Okay. This isn't predictable. Oh. Let's just check something real quick. Oh, I didn't realize it was a volunteer staff, but that's okay. This is still really big. I got a writing gig for the regular. Time did she send this to me? Yeah, I was at 10:30. I mean, I was doing stuff here, but I was not in the place to be able to reply. Okay. Hi Lilith, I deeply appreciate your quick reply. I hadn't expected to hear back until Monday, so this is truly fantastic. I am eventually looking for a paid writing position, but with my last several jobs being dedicated to sales, my primary focus is building my portfolio. To that end, I believe our goals align. If I may credit my pieces as part of a growing portfolio, it would be an honor to provide at least one article per week going forward. My 2 sample pieces are focused on nature and home crafts, but I actually do enjoy a fairly wide range of hobbies. If our future discussions go well, I find great joy in a smidge of direction, such as requests for a particular theme on a given week to properly diversify the content from your many writers. I'm also quite happy working in conjunction with other writers and would love to learn the in-house style guides your team utilizes so I can provide pieces that are very nearly perfect. Before I write a novel, allow me to sign off. Thank you again, and keenly expressing interest in a voluntary writing position, Kendra Nelson Marie. Woo! I did it! Yeah! So exciting! So exciting! Da, 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 da. All right. Oh, that was good news. And dear gods, Watercolor University, I am a whole bunch of unpleasant things. Okay, there we go. Alright, so Alright, so well, that was super exciting. I get to write for a magazine potentially. Are you dry? You're dry! Hooray! And start also putting away my watercolors. Watercolor sketches, I should specify. And this is still stickers. Back in the sticker page it goes. There we go. And I'll date that. Well, that's very exciting for me. Okay. Never know what kind of news you'll find. Okay, so back to editing. Again, this style works because I am on a Twitch stream and I don't want to show you what I'm doing, and I've also trimmed off the borders. It allows me to write little notes and such like and give the author a very colorful spread. God, I want to watercolor again. Okay, well, I do have enough information here to write a note. So, in essence, the correction here, it is kind of harsh, but it is definitely something that I think will immediately start changing and improving this particular scene. But the advice is basically have the characters doing something. It's very rare that having characters sitting around a table talking and theorizing and ruminating and pontificating and all those things. It's usually very dry, very boring when that's going on, especially when the paragraphs between are just background history. So instead of just doing that, I'm advising that the characters be actively putting on their equipment, actively cleaning their surroundings. And if someone's not cleaning, then that becomes very useful information for, like, yeah, this one's kind of a lazy one, or this one's this, or this one's that. And can really help to sell the scene as a whole, and relay a lot of very crucial information about the personalities of these various characters. It also serves to break up the pace. So if there's paragraphs that are kind of starting to wane a little long, well, that doesn't have to stand. You can actually do something about that. But just by, even if the information being relayed is boring, which arguably any large amount of history and plot dumping, exposition dumping is inherently a little boring. Sometimes it's very necessary. Like, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just, it slows things down. But you could have something like someone is so annoyed that they accidentally tip over a mop bucket. So the information is still relayed, but the characters are doing something that causes the reader to be like, that happened. Or, you know, you can relay emotion associated with the facts. Based on what action they choose to do. Maybe they, I don't know, maybe they start canvassing the corners of the room for mice as they're thinking about something else. There's a sharp contrast between how much enjoyment I had in the first part versus the second part, and I think it has to do with the fact that they're stationary. I really do. As far as the corrections, okay. So this one is mostly there's one comma, but mostly this is saying to cut material. It's not that it's bad, it's just that a lot of this is material that's already been covered, so we don't need it twice. I think that's the next note to make, but I'm gonna, do I want to watercolor? I do. Yes, I do. I'm gonna go Fiest with my Quasi-Bad brush. I'll show you what it looks like. My palette is actually, my mixing palette is actually pretty clean at this point. It's just some slight residue, so that's good. And I think I'll do Ocean. Who doesn't love a little bit of ocean? actually going to get my medium ready first, specifically because I know how poor this this paper is for watercolor. So I'm starting with blue. I'll come in from the sides. Okay, so alright, so just starting here and going straight down. Slightly too watered, so that's fine. I'm mixing my highly pigmented blue with my green, diluting it down and just coming in from the sides. And, oh, I should move this so you can at least kind of see what I'm doing. So I'm very pleased. Okay, so this is my ocean, which again, it's pale enough you can see the lines underneath, so the text will definitely show up. I think I'm going to go with a purple with a hint of red. So I'm going to start at the bottom, or sorry, start at the top and